we are going to be in a battle. Days like today are going to happen, and it's going to be a battle all the way to $2,500 on gold.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin specials for December 11th through December 18th, 2023, while supplies last. First, we feature 1 10th-ounce gold maples at just $30 over melt with a minimum order of 5. Next, we have silver eagles at $4.99 over spot, making this a great time to swap silver bars into silver eagles at the lowest premium in years. Finally, constitutional 90% silver is just $3 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Peter Grandich from Peter Grandich & Company. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always enjoy speaking with you, Elijah.
Well, it's great to have you today. I did want to get your perspective on the volatility we've seen in the metals markets. Most of the time when we talk about volatility, we're talking about a move to the downside, which is, I guess, half of what we saw. But we did see an exciting move to the upside last Sunday night. Your perspective on what we saw, and when is gold going to finally break out? It seems like it's having a bit of a struggle here.
Well, first of all, I wish what had happened on the weekend never happened, because it's created an air of disappointment, which is being compounded today as we speak here on Friday, midday. What basically happened, from everything I can understand, taking 40 years of experience and some sharp people that I still learn from, they all concluded that, for lack of a better word, the Chinese, after Friday's trading in the U.S., started their week with an aggressive buy to the point where spot actually went above futures, and it created an arbitrating situation that once those Chinese buyers stopped, a floor collapsed below, and it created an air of disappointment, and we need to get to this. It's an important thing because it's a statistic I put out this week that's very important, but it created just another log on the disappointment of owning bullion fireplace that I call, that always is thrown on by the financial world. As I've always told you, the financial world is always going to treat gold as kryptonite. It's never going to ever open up and suddenly hear various financial institutions telling you how great gold is. But that then set the tone for the week. People started looking at charts. Oh my God, it's another failure. And then, of course, here we are again Friday with another just messy employment release. Yeah, they put out that they corrected one from a month ago, but no one cares about that. Dire difference between them and the ADP, as if ADP doesn't know what they're talking about, although I think they do. I think it's the BLS that has an issue. Create an aura of just enough good stuff that makes stock market happy, but enough to give the dollar rise, and of course sell gold when you see the dollar rise. And it's just more disappointment, and it fits into something I spoke about before Thanksgiving, Elijah, and I always tell people this. There's always a don't worry, be happy crowd on Wall Street. You and I have had the discussion. But their favorite period is between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day, because that's when people in general just push aside worries. Okay, I'll worry about the diet in January. I'll worry about getting my finances in January. I'll fix what the wife has been asking me to fix in January, but I'm going to enjoy the holidays. And it's not a good time to talk about things that are negative, or in a sense, be a bah humbug person. And so the stock market tends, and of course the traditional Christmas Santa Claus rally will take place. But what's real interesting, and what I find, and I think this is really critical, perhaps one of the more important fundamentals to ownership of gold right now. Over almost half of financial advisors licensed in the United States, Series 7, 63, 65, have been only practicing since 2008. So they only saw the tail end of one financial crisis, and basically are straight up with a little hiccup in 2022. Almost 80% are in it since the new millennium began. So January 1, 2000. So since January 1, 2000 to a week ago, that's when I had it charted for, gold is up 693%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, because when everybody talks what does stock market do today, they quote the Dow. The Dow was up 263%. And even if you take what the dividends that you would have generated by owning the Dow and reinvest it into more Dow stocks, it still underperformed gold. And I'm telling you this much, I take everything I have and risk this, Elijah. If we polled 100 of those financial advisors in the business only from January 1st, 2000 and on, and said this question to them, what has performed better since January 1, 2000, gold or Dow? They go, that's stock market. Are you crazy, sir? That's exactly what they would say. And nothing is further from the truth. And you probably have some people that have owned gold for maybe as long as that. And they think somehow that their stock market friends are killing them. But when in the reality is, they're not. But we're never going to get, and it's very important for your viewers and mine who tune into this, to understand you're never going to get general financial advisor community supporting gold in a big way because it flies in the face of what they make their living off, and that's selling financial assets. So, yeah, is it more disappointing? Yes. Is it more disappointing today that we're back at 2000? Maybe we'll finish under, maybe we'll finish all those things, but nothing has changed. And what I think, what's really the good news on that spike, that the Chinese were, remember now, gold is shifting. It's not being dominated in Europe and New York anymore. It's moving to the Far East. And the formation of the BRICS is one of the main reasons for that. The very fact that the Chinese were that interested and that appetite at that level tells me that, yeah, we might have get disappointed and may take a few weeks or even a few months to get back to that level. But I think it's an indication of things to come. So I actually, short-term, yeah, short-term negative, if you want to call that, but long-term real positive what happened.
Right. It seems like the fundamentals haven't changed, even though we've seen a bit of a sell-off here in gold. But if you look at the chart on a technical level, I mean, we're still making higher highs and higher lows. Your perspective on that, and when do you think, is it, next quarter that we finally break out of these levels?
Yeah, it's on my Twitter page. I took the time to put a couple of charts up. And for over 2 years, we've made just a series of higher lows. And I can tell you at each low, if we took the commentary on gold at those dates, they would all be the same, the ones we're going to hear today. More disappointment in the gold market today when the dollar rallied and blah, 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 blah. But despite all this, it is climbing higher and in a pattern that fits a chart that you and I have talked about, and we're not alone in this. I think that one of two of the best bullish patterns you can have, and that's called a cup and handle. And this is only solidifying it and making it stronger. And so when I tie that into the fundamentals and understand what's happening with the BRICS, how they're moving towards using gold in some form sometime down the road to facilitate however they're going to structure their trading. Right now, we already know that, they're swapping currencies, and I don't want to take away any questions, but they're also at the point now where we have a significant oil producer saying, I'm not even going to take the dollar anymore. All these things are playing into what I think will give us the type of year that we even the don't worry, be happy crowd will have to go take notice. And that would be next year. As you know, I wrote earlier this week that we are going to be in a battle. Days like today are going to happen. And it's going to be a battle all the way to $2,500 on gold.
And why do you think it really hasn't hit the mainstream too hard, that we're seeing this de-dollarization, we're seeing the expansion of BRICS? It seems like the media in the U.S. hasn't really been covering it too much.
Well, why should they? Because it flies in the face of what they make their living off. Listen, there's a handful that's tied to the gold community. So they're going to always put things into a gold positive frame most times. Well, multiply that by 10,000 and then you get the the financial media. You know, I don't expect on the financial networks now, each one of them has a significant advertising community for cryptocurrencies. So I don't expect to turn on any of those stations now and hear anything really negative about it. It'd be like me picking up Money Magazine and reading an article, you should sell mutual funds. It's just not going to happen. So that financial media that you speak of is really, I always like to use the terminology, they're tied to the hips of what I call the don't worry, be happy crowd. And the don't worry, be happy crowd is just heavily tilted to being bullish, seeing the cup half full, whether you like it or not. And I always say this, and it's from personal experience. It's how I gained my fame back in '87 when I was a head of investment strategy, forecast the crash. The firm wanted me to retract it. And the chairman said, you can never make a living doing that on Wall Street. You make a living by people, you know, being bullish on stocks. And he was right. So I really expect that even if the Archangel Gabriel came to the top 5 market strategists over the weekend, Elijah, and said, I'm here from God. There's going to be a crash on Tuesday. Get everybody out on Monday. Even if they went down to their office, believing the angel visited them, their firm would not allow them to say that. So if that is true, which I believe it is, and they are tilted one way, how are they going to get behind gold and start talking about all the things you and I are going to talk about? Who would want to own stocks or maybe even bonds after that discussion?
It is interesting, like the stories that you hear from people who have been in the financial markets and in the, you know, the big institutions, how it really is a push to sell stocks and bonds. And your testimony there just adds to that. I did want to ask you about what we're seeing right now in the stock market and also in the bond market. It seemed like in 2022, we saw quite a I guess maybe the beginning of a crash or that, but this year we've seen a bit of a rally. As we move into 2024, what is your expectation on like traditional, not really traditional if you go back a long time, but you know, traditional for the last 40, 50 years, those kinds of investments in the traditional portfolio?
Much of the stock market rise this year was extremely concentrated in a handful of stocks. In fact, less than 12 of them were responsible for the vast majority of the gain. Now, that's great if you own them, but there's a lot of people that didn't, especially people who are in what we call passive funds, where they're not actively management. They put it in certain segments and it sits there, and then that manages only to buy and sell based on things happening within that segment, not because the market crashed or the market went up. So a lot of people did not see that gain, but those that were in that, fair play, they had it. I don't believe the stock market is anything what it was when I entered it. It'd be 40 years ago this coming March when I entered it. Back then, 90% of the trading was retail people, and those people were literally buying stocks to be part owners of companies, buying and selling them. That doesn't really exist anymore. Like I just said, half the money in markets now are in passive funds. The remaining half, 80% are in some sort of computer-driven program using algorithms, whether simply to use buy and sell when certain news stories hit, wordings to complicated, sophisticated, arithmetic-driven futures, options, all things happening in an nanosecond that a human being could never transact all at once. They care little, probably don't even know the names of the companies or what they do and don't care. So for those of us that go back then that have, you know, losing like me and turning gray or no hair, we have to recognize that the market we kind of grew up in isn't the market what it is now. Having said that, I still believe there's some fundamentals that have to carry on. And one is, if a market doesn't get broader participation, it becomes like an apex, and eventually the weight of the people below pull down those that are up there. So the first thing I would say is, if you are bullish, which I'm not, but if you are, you would want to see, after we get past this holiday period, a broadening of this rally, more participation on the players. When in fact, if that doesn't happen, and even if it's still going up, that may be an indication for either people that like to play the downside or to move out of markets. I have a change coming for me. It's the first time I mentioned it, so you have the exclusive, if you call it that. And you still have to pay $2 for a cup of coffee, Elijah. But the bottom line is, I'm really going to focus I'm in the advanced stage of the twilight of my career, like I said, 40 years. I'm absolutely convinced within 5 to 10 years, we're going to go through the worst possible time in America, simply because of what we're doing financially, getting to the point where we're borrowing like there's no tomorrow. We're not even going to be, it's going to be challenging to pay our interest. We have all sorts of social and political issues that I can go over and over with, but they're so acute now and so coming together for a perfect storm that I feel I'm being called to, in a sense, be a knower type. And that's not to pat myself in the back or put myself equal to a biblical character. But I really think it's time to build the boat and not to wait for the rain. I'm certain when Noah was building his boat, the people were going, hey, Noah, there's only been a drop of rain. What are you building that big boat for? It's kind of where I feel we're at now. And part of that is because some of the things you and I just spoke about, the stock market is not the place that it once was. It doesn't offer to me the value that it should have. And there's too many issues that are happening now, and finding too much either complacency or lack of knowledge, both on the investment community and the professional community. I really honestly feel that 8 out of 10 financial advisors couldn't read a balance sheet. And they couldn't start to describe what an accountant should know about liabilities and unfunded liabilities and all that stuff. And yet they're telling people what to do in stock markets. So I really have grave concern about the future coming. And yeah, could it be 2 good years before those 5 and 7 years hit? Yeah, but I think we really have to start preparing, Elijah. So unless the stock market saw dramatic broadening of participation, I would think whatever you want to call this counter trend rally in a bear market, new bull market, whatever you want to stable it is, I don't think it can last long.
One of the aspects, and we've talked about this on our last interview, how one of the really terrible situations out there that is going to spell disaster for the financial system, it seems like, is the U.S. debt and kind of this culture of debt, you could say, that America and I guess the rest of the world really has taken on. Your perspective on that? I know really the Bible really influences the way that you think and the way that you run your organization. And you've mentioned how there are many, many verses in the Bible about finances and actually against debt. So can you expand on that?
So whether you're like I believe you and I are, where the Bible is really the foundation to our life and a manual of how we should conduct ourselves, or it's just you want to view it as an historical book that may have been written by more than one author, and there's still no denying what an influence it had on civilization. And it's been here and lasted longer than any other financial book. And the interesting facts about it, not even from a religious standpoint, first of all, half the parables, which are an important part of that book, are related to matters of money and finance and possessions. There are more verses about finance related items than there is heaven or hell. And if you think about it, well, again, you don't want to think it's religion and all. The purpose or the end game to that book is either you get here or you come here. Yet whoever wrote the book talks more about matters of money than either that or that. That's a really important thing I think that people need to understand about Scripture. And then there's not a positive verse about debt. In fact, there's a lot of warnings about what debt leads to. And therefore, when you tie into, like you just said, we are past the fail-safe point. You know, it was a wonderful movie. You have to be an old person to remember it, called Fail-Safe with Henry Fonda. And we're past that point where they knew once the pilots went past there that they couldn't get them to turn back. And we're now in just free fall, in a sense, in terms of caring or recognizing it, to the point where we now have multi-trillion-dollar budget deficits, yearly deficits. Not when I started, there was less than $1 trillion in long-term debt. And so it can't be sustainable. The Congressional Budget Office, and again, I hammered this home, and if people want to look it up, just put it in Google, Congressional Budget Office, earlier this year, put out a warning based on what they were seeing then, that in less than 10 years, the United States would have $50 trillion, and that would be almost impossible to finance the interest payments given what the expectations on what average interest rates should be, and what would then we still need after that just to maintain the country, to pay, the army or whatever the case may be. Well, since that time, there's been an acceleration on the amount of debt. In fact, it increased 600 billion more than we expected in 2023. And therefore, they now have talked about lowering that target to as soon as between 6 and 7 years. Well, Elijah, I feel certainly the clients I deal with, almost certain most of our listeners, please God, are going to be alive 6 to 7 years from now. This is now something that's within reach. See, people say, them gold guys been telling us for 20-something years about debt and all that. And you're right. There was, because it was only $1 trillion, then it was $5 trillion. But now we're at a level where anybody with a rightful mind and being fair and honest can say, wait a minute, 50 trillion, 5% interest, that's $2.5 trillion in interest. We're going to have to pay it. We only took in $5 trillion last year, best year ever of tax revenue in the U.S. How do we pay everything else with just $2.5 trillion? And by the way, most Americans don't know this. What's America's biggest asset it has on its books? People are shocked when they learn that. I think you know the answer. It's student loans. That's the single biggest asset the United States carry. And we got a guy in that's there now. He just forgave another 20, 50 billion of it and all. I mean, if it wasn't so frightening and scareful, I would just laugh as kind of the laugh I had. But it's really concerning. It's concerning to the point where I believe that I need to focus more on sharing that story, knowing a lot of people ain't going to want to hear it. It's not going to send a lot of people through our doors of our business. But I think, somebody has to speak about it. And it's just amazing that even where I run our planning business through a wonderful man, my financial mentor, a Guardian Insurance general agent for almost 40 years. The young people they hire down there, they have no idea about this. They're going out honorably. I met these young kids. They're not sitting in the office going, how can I scheme somebody today? But what they're able to share with people and talk about, people are not going to have any idea. This is going to broadside the vast majority of Americans.
Another thing that it seems like might, as you say, really catch people by surprise is the cryptocurrencies right now. It seems like if we look at this on an objective level, just looking at the chart of Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies out there, it seems like a mania to a lot of people. And whenever there's huge bubbles, whenever we've seen bubbles in the past, very few people are actually expecting it. They think it can go on forever. But you've called Bitcoin Bitcon, and I wanted to get your perspective on that. It seems like, at least from my perspective, if this is a bubble, if this is, not something that's going to play a big role in the future of the financial world, it's probably the biggest bubble we've ever seen, which makes sense because, we're such an interconnected world right now and information travels instantly. So we would see the biggest bubble today. But your perspective on that, why is Bitcoin Bitcon and what is the future of it?
So the tendency, especially at 40 and under and 30 and under, is right away, look at his old fart looking at me there. And he's a relic. He doesn't know. Time has passed. I've heard all those and far worse. I even had a death threat, a legitimate death threat from it. But the bottom line was this. I watched it come about. Now, it's important. I wrote a very important commentary called Bitcon, the sequel. And I'm sure that's what you're referring to because you would get it. And it goes back to, I never took a position in it. When people were talking about it, I said, listen, it's just like certain penny stocks got hot for a while. The internet stocks got hot. If you want to play it, Mr. and Mrs. America or our clients, go right ahead. But understand this, a lot of them aren't going to make it. They're going to be like the internet bubble. The first go around, they went crazy. There was things up 10,000%. And then 3 years later, 95% of the companies that had .com in their names were gone. Okay. That was my attitude until it approached 70,000. And something happened then on dealing with somebody. I said, that's it. And I came out publicly, spoke about it, just as like you and I speak now, and said I would sell it. And I went on a couple of these widely followed mediums that are on the internet, few 100,000 view their commentaries, and boy, it lit up. And I'm telling you, not only with the comments, but I got some really bad emails. It's one thing to give me constructive criticism. I'm always open to it because I can write a book about how to lose money as much as I can write a book about how to make money. But I just said, like you just said, that's it. And then sure enough, things cave. People don't realize there's an estimate that there's already been a loss, gone, not price low and come back. It's gone. Up to $1 trillion worth went into these things and NFTs and all these other things in the first go around. That's money that's gone. It's lost. It was either stolen, blew up, whatever the case is. But I always wrote back then that Bitcoin is going to be one of the survivors. And people say, well, why do you think that? Well, all the big people that are in it are still in it. And they got to get out, right? Somehow, how do they make money in it? Because what's failed, I hope you don't mind me taking some time on this, Elijah. What's failed in this, what no one likes to talk about, is if you can recall what was being said 2-3 years ago, it was going to revolutionize transactions and all these things, and everybody was going to use it. Everywhere you were going to go, you were going to be able to use Bitcoin. And sure enough, there'd be a little announcement, MasterCard, Bitcoin's going to $1 million. It never happened. And the reason it never happened and will never happen is it's so expensive to make a transaction in it, and it takes so much longer. You can do like 7 or 10 versus a credit card, 20,000 get done. So the technology hasn't changed. It's not like now it's rallying again because, hey, Pete, they improved it. They fixed everything. Yeah, I would say, okay, that's good. None of that's changed. And how do I know that? You go back right now, the guy Fink that runs, and I make fun of his name, and I say, hey, as a kid, we were told never listen to a Fink. But anyway, he's in charge of BlackRock. He basically said 5-6 years ago, multiple times, it's criminal, it's worse than this, wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole and all. Again, no change in the technology. All of a sudden, the guy loves it. Well, it just so happens his company's trying to introduce the first big ETF, which they're going to make a ton of money trading it if they can make this thing into where everybody wants to own it and so forth. And I said, what would be what I would get behind them with? If they took their payment in Bitcoin. That would impress me. You know what? We believe so much in Bitcoin that you should use this exchange. We're not going to charge you hard dollars. We're going to charge, you can pay us in Bitcoin. If that happens, I'll change my opinion. Like, I don't think it will happen though. The problem with this thing is that, as you said, when you get such mania, and let me give you the last part, because I can talk about this for hours, and you didn't bring me here to do that. But let me tell you, one of the most important parts will not allow me to ever be involved in it from the long side. I entered this business indirectly because I lost money through a penny stock broker when I was a warehouse manager. And penny stock brokers back in the 70s and 80s were kind of like, if you ever watched the movie Boiler Room, even though that supposedly took place 10 years ago, that was what most brokerage firms that weren't New York Stock Exchange member firms, that's what they operated in. There was a lot of money lost, and we touted stuff, and you can watch the movie Wall Street, the guy that ran it, and how they played him and all. Anyway, there's a man out there, and I'll say his name, Saylor. He has for years told people, sell your stocks, sell your bonds, sell your real estate, sell your home, and borrow if you have to, and buy just Bitcoin. Not even like say, okay, cryptocurrencies are great, just put it throughout the cryptocurrency community. Elijah, first rule of any worthy financial advisor is never put everything into one thing, no matter what is, even gold. As much as you love gold and all, I can't imagine that you tell everybody, yeah, sell your stocks, your bonds, your real estate, and buy some gold coins for me. No, you don't do that. Yet that's what he was doing. And the financial media, like Tao TV, I call CNBC Tao TV, instead of saying, oh, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. I can understand you being bullish. they just carte blanche and still out there doing that. And everybody, 500,000, $1 million. And the last thing they like to tout, this is what they mostly like to throw out to me. And I can see it in a recent interview I do. Oh, tell that guy when gold's up 69,000%, I'll buy his gold and not own my Bitcoin. First of all, most of those people never bought it at $11 or $100 or $1,000. All you got to do is go look at the actual trading and see that the average American did not start to get involved until it went above 20,000. Just go look. That's where where it started. And the biggest amount of volume was substantially above 40,000. So very few people. That's like from the penny stock days. That's what they would do. Hey, look, this was 8 cents. It's now $1.20. We think it's going to 10. That's not a saleable. That's not a reason to go and run in it. And so everything that happened before is happening again. And by the way, there are statistics. It's hard to know this, but experts who do follow this far more than I do say anywhere from 60 to 80% of Bitcoins are held by less than 1% of people. So I believe behind all of this, they got out some before, they still need to get out. And the only way they'll ever be able to sell a large share of that is to get the masses involved, have people like BlackRun running these exchanges, brokers talking about it and all. And that's their hope. Can they do it? Yeah, it's possible they can do it. Do I want to participate in something like that? No, don't want to touch it with a 100-foot pole. And that's what my feeling is about it. And so much was lost. There's no responsibility in the general financial media. No one asks, well, so many people lost money. Don't you think people should be a little bit cautious? No, because now they have sponsors and they have programs based on it. And in their minds, they legitimized it. So I don't think there's any objectivity in that. And therefore, I just think that, and what I said in my commentary, I said back in July when it was 30,000, the new run was coming. And I said, I don't think they're going to get it over 50,000, but between now and year end, they could get it to 50,000, and it's like 44. The big last thing they have to sell the people on is this halving that will take place supposedly next spring. Cryptocurrency's peak should be between now and that halving. And so can it go higher still? Yeah. Do you want to take a shot and throw some loose change at it? Fine. Own it as versus gold, which has a 2,000-year track record. The people that do have the real money in the world, the central banks are buying it. And we know for a fact the world is moving away from America, unifying away from it. And the people that are doing that are acquiring gold like there's no tomorrow. I'll take my chance with the relic. Thank you.
I think it is definitely a lot of concerning developments there in the cryptocurrency space. I would really recommend people do their own research. And obviously, I think this is so helpful to hear your perspective on it, because if you listen to the mainstream, it seems like a lot of hype out there, and it has gone mainstream. And it's crazy over the last couple of years how, your neighbor down the street or the guy changing my car battery is talking about cryptocurrency. I'm like, what?
I don't mean to interrupt because this is such an important subject. Just look at all the guys that were just experts 2 years ago, what happened to them, and all the different coins that came out with. And these were all it was such a mania. I think it was Dog Coin where the company announced, we're not legit. It's a fake coin. And people wrote it up 1,000%. That's what you have again now. But it's more intense because the group that's left with a lot of money is trying to legitimize it. See, the reason they attack gold, if you want to take over something, you don't attack the fourth highest or the third. If you want to be the champion of the world, you don't walk up to the guy that's fighting a fight that's the sixth rank in the world. Hey, I think I can beat you. You walk up to the world champion while everybody in the media is looking, going, I can beat you. Kind of like in Rocky when Mr. T does that. Well, that's what they do with gold. They know gold is the king, and they go, and it's guys like that Grandich. That's their hope, and to suck the money out of that into theirs. And did it work for a while? Yeah, I can tell you right now, gold has been hurt in some respects by cryptocurrencies, monies, especially from the younger people who might have found its way in, especially on the mining shares and the juniors and all. These kids, just like my daughter who's 31, she doesn't know what a magazine or a newspaper is, never will, never wanna. Same thing, their kind of attitude is, gold, it's relic. They hear that from their people. But I bet against the sailors and the Max guys and those type of guys. I don't bet on them, no matter what they have. To me, they're just 21st century snake oil salesmen. That's for me. Doesn't mean everybody else can think that, but that's my honest evaluation. If we had a snake oil salesman for the 21st century, that guy, sailor, would be it in my book.
Before I let you go, Peter, if our viewers are interested in learning more about your work and looking also at your firm, petergrandich.com, I know we'll put a link in the description of this video there. Can you share with our viewers what they can find there?
Sure. If they're cryptocurrency nuts, I work out of Australia.
No. I'm glad that's not true.
It's petergrandich.com is the website. Grandich. You'll have all that stuff up. I really use, I keep calling it Twitter. I can't call it X, but I use X/Twitter as my main vehicle to speak. I also have a YouTube channel as well.
Fantastic. Well, Peter, we really appreciate you sharing all your insights today. And I think, as you mentioned, I think people should really do their own due diligence before getting into the cryptocurrency sphere. No financial advice here, but I guess just be cautious is a good advice there. So, Peter, thank you so much.
Elijah, before you sign off for me, I'd like to just say something. I hope you don't mind, and I know you won't cut it out. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you. You give me an opportunity, other than relevant radio, where I can talk about faith and all, to which me is critical. It wasn't in the first half of my career, but it is now. So I really want to just wish you and your family and your organization a most Merry Christmas, because I know on this channel I can still say Merry Christmas, but a blessed New Year. And you're an honorable young man, and I really, truly enjoy speaking with you. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Peter. Right back at you. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to also talk about the faith on the channel. It's something that I treasure dearly, and it's great to be able to talk with you about that. Thank you once again, Peter, and God bless, and Merry Christmas. Peace be with you. Thank you. God bless.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.